Cue Dave and Ryan in 3, 2, 1.
It's Dave and Ryan's movie review.
Dave and Ryan's movie review. And, you know, we brought in Michael, about a month ago probably, to talk to talk Fantastic Four. And Jason has been on the show a few times, loves coming in and talking because it just gives us a chance to be nerds and talk about superhero movies, even though everybody apparently hates them, is what I'm hearing. But
well, they're wrong.
Now that they've seen Fantastic Four, we brought Michael in to kind of get his take on it, get Jason's take on it, and I really want to know how close we kind of were to as far as what the comics are and those kinds of things, and where do you think we're headed next? So let's start with accuracy. How did they do?
Well, for starters, I'll just say Jason and I already spent over an hour on the way back talking about this. But to kind of rehash, to kind of like condense what we said, I was incredibly happy with the movie. I loved it. Immediately after it finished, I was like, I need to see this again, which I still haven't done, but I want to. I thought this is probably the most faithful version of the characters we have seen on screen. I felt the dynamics between the family was great. Reed and Sue, I felt like was a realistic couple. They were not without their fraught tension. I loved the little domestic scene where Sue was like, I thought you were going to make the baby crib. I thought that was great, a little thing, and Reed's reaction. They really get to that aspect of Reed's character, who is like kind of oblivious to the world at times when he is so in his world, and Sue's like frustration, but you can tell she cares about this person.
Well, and that was one thing that I noticed after it just came out. I read the article the other day that if he doesn't have a touch of maybe like ADHD or autism or something like that, he came out because, like you said, that scene right there kind of showed that.
Yeah, and that's kind of was my reaction, is like, this is a really good depiction of the fact that in the comics, it's never stated, but I think since the beginning, it's like Reed has that touch of being on the autism spectrum that we would recognize today.
Well, and it's like the mind is always working on something else.
Exactly, and yeah, that's something we talked about.
Absolutely, and I think the previous incarnations of the Fantastic Four, he was just always sort of wacky and distracted. And I think here we got at something that felt much more honest. I loved the scene where he has to present what they did with Galactus to the throng of reporters, and he is super awkward and he has no idea how to deal with it. And that gives us a clear sense of the dynamic of this Fantastic Four, because later we see Sue go out to interact with the crowd, and she's pitch perfect, and she convinces all of them that they're okay. And I just think that's a really interesting way to do it. Those previous Fantastic Four movies, I think often the original 2005 did a nice job with the Ben and Johnny dynamic, but they've never really understood what to do with Reed and Sue. And I think it's hard to know what to do with a married couple. We haven't seen this very often in superhero films. We don't see a lot of stable romantic relationships.
The Incredibles.
Which is, of course, based on the Fantastic Four.
So my question would be then, did the introduction of Franklin change that dynamic completely and bring it to where it needed to be?
I think so, and I think it really is, like we talked about on the way back to Price, was that moment where Reed, of course, says, of course, I was never going to give him Franklin, but Sue can see in him that's like, he considered it. Yes. And that reaction and Reed's reaction, that was so believable, and you can see how this was a destabilizing force, but Reed is committed to it.
And we can go back in the comics and see these moments. In fact, a storyline in which Reed has to basically turn Franklin into a vegetable to save the world that happens back in the 70s, I think. And so when that happens in the movie, and Reed says, well, we can't possibly let him have Franklin, it's like, I don't know if that's the immediate reaction that Reed goes to, at least not in his head. And I love the fact that they give us that, because that's Reed. Reed has to think about that as an option, whether he wants to or not, and Sue just won't. And it just shows this really important difference between the two.
I honestly thought that moment when Reed is over Franklin in the bassinet, it's dark, and he's talking to Franklin about the machine creating and everything. I thought they might actually go for that somehow he had figured out how to identify and remove the power or depower Franklin or whatever, and that was going to be his solution.
And going back to what you were saying the first time when he comes back and they realize what a daunting force Galactus is, and they ask him that question.
Yeah.
And you can tell, but you can tell his mind is somewhere else. And he just completely pauses, and it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And when Reed Richards doesn't know, we're all in trouble.
Yeah.
I think the movie got the gravity of that moment when he says it, because I think Pedro Pascal just does fantastic with this role.
He was great.
And
Was he fantastic?
Yes.
I
He was
absolutely
Mr.
think so.
Fantastic.
He was Mr. Fantastic.
Don't do
And I was just so impressed. I know that I guess we're getting over our love for Pedro Pascal on certain portions of the internet, but it's not deserved here. I think he does a great job, and Vanessa Kirby couldn't be any better.
I told Ryan when I saw it, I told my wife and my daughters the same thing. Every time I heard him talk, though, I just heard The Mandalorian. That was my only distraction from this show.
And I think I have not seen. I think I stopped watching Mandalorian after about season 2 or so, and I never really got into it. So I'm not over the Pedro Pascal love. I'm kind of new to it, and I buy it. I buy him. I love the mustache. I love him as his character.
So another couple of questions. I feel like in all three of the incarnations of the movie, the Ben Grimm character was pretty close to the same. He was a pilot. He was, and he was friends and those kinds of things. The one that kind of took a turn in this one for me, and I don't know if he was that way in the comics, but I can't necessarily recall him being that way in any of the other movies, except for maybe the Miles Teller 4, was Johnny being a scientist.
That was one of the things that, as we discussed, it felt a little unearned at time, because they don't really set up Johnny as... Other than that moment in the montage at the beginning where it's Reed assembled a group of the best scientists, pilots, whatever, who just happened to be his friends. We never really saw that. And so Johnny being this linguist, being able to decode the surfer's language, I thought was where did this come from? I don't know, but I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, I didn't care.
And that was my question though. Is in the comics did he know anything other than just how to go out and have a good time?
No, but he wants to be an important part of the team.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And I think that was what was great about it, is because we saw Johnny contributing to the team dynamic.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't all that concerned with it being unearned, because it was really valuable to what happened, and everybody was contributing. Yeah. Can we talk about Ben for a second?
Yeah.
Because I do think you're right that the basic roots of Ben's character are the same in all these films. But this was a different Ben, because he wasn't dealing with the self-loathing in the way that we saw elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Chickless was so depressed the whole time.
Yeah.
And I love The Thing. And I will speak every day about The Thing solo series from the 80s. Marvel 2-in-1 is my jam from the 70s. But this was a Ben who had kind of gotten over the self-loathing, which doesn't really happen in the comics all that often. But we got to the point where he is comfortable with who he is, which kind of made him a little less interesting in some ways. And I think the character did less, but boy, he looked good. And I love the presentation of the character. It just felt like he was a little underused in a way, because they resolved his problem, but he wasn't whiny. So I was okay.
Right, but it also kind of opened him up to, like you said, he was confident and he knew who he was, and that's why he started hanging around Natasha Lyonne in this one.
Yeah.
So
I mean, my only criticism is I wish I got more. I mean, it's kind of like the whole movie. I wish the movie was longer, and I never, ever say that. My favorite Fantastic Four movie before this, I believe you talked about it on the air. You kind of mentioned me liking The Rise of the Silver Surfer. And you didn't mention the main reason I liked Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Because it's only 90 minutes?
Because it's the shortest.
it's the shortest.
So I thought that was great.
Well, I will say the 2015 is about the same length, but you can't get through that one.
I can't.
It's a hard watch.
It's a hard watch, especially the last 30 minutes, but you haven't even gotten
and
there.
I think, honestly, too, yes, the fact that it was only 90 minutes and Lawrence Fishburne made a big difference.
Yeah.
Granted, it was just his voice, but that's a calming voice, and you know who it is, and that's a respectful voice. And
Absolutely.
So speaking of Lawrence Fishburne, can we talk about the Surfer and Galactus in this movie a little bit?
Absolutely.
Because my biggest worry coming into this is, how is Galactus going to look? How are we going to believe this gigantic creature on screen in a way that doesn't feel silly? And I thought it completely worked. I thought all the little bits and bobs on the Galactus suit, the way he moved, it felt like a Kirby, all that little Kirby stuff in the artwork come to life, and I thought it was great.
And I don't know if you heard it or not.
I thought he looked weird.
Yeah. Ryan thought that the CGI for Galactus
His whole
was a little
face
gummy
was
bear.
weird.
I liked it. I liked it so much.
I think Michael and I have spent so much time in the comic book world that weird is just kind of par for the course. Galactus is a bizarre-looking character.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the most powerful beings in the universe, and he's gone with purple.
They kind of said it at one point. I forget who it was. It might have been Reed at some point, but they basically compared Galactus, or called Galactus, a space god. Mm-hmm. And that is almost literally in the foreword to one of the Marvel Masterworks version that introduced Galactus. He, like, the way Stan Lee tells the story, which it is Stan Lee, so take everything with a slight grain of salt. Mm-hmm. But he basically, the way he tells the story of how they came up with Galactus was like, what else can we do? They've just done this run of a great Frightful Four story. They introduced the Inhumans, and they're like, we're 47 issues into this book. What can we do next? And one of them is basically like, Fantastic Four versus God. And that was basically the setup.
But he's going to wear purple.
He's going to be purple and a giant, and he devours planets.
And Kirby's like, let's give him a naked silver man on a surfboard.
Yeah.
Like, yes.
But
let's do it.
It didn't feel silly. It didn't feel silly at all. And but the only complaint I had was, as much as I liked Shia LaBeouf being the surfer, something about her line delivery just never landed with me. It never had the gravitas I wanted to it.
I think it was almost like, and I think coming from where we're in World of It now, it's almost like it felt like they just typed her words into a voice generator and it just spit them out.
It was it was a little flat, I felt.
Yeah, it was just very...
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I get that part of it, but I thought Julia Garner was great.
Yeah, I thought it worked. I thought the entire presentation of Galactus worked, and I think it also gave me, upon reflection, I think one of my favorite moments in the film, which is the final battle where Sue just shoves Galactus back, and it's just like why I love that one. It's like it shows you how Sue is secretly the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four, and that is one of her development over the course of the comics into the most powerful character. Mm-hmm. I always have to remind people she killed a freaking Celestial in the comics by herself. That's how powerful Sue is. and
we saw that.
Yeah, we saw that because she shoved him back.
And so we've broke it down. Sounds like we both liked it. Everybody liked it. Mm-hmm. Okay. So where are we going now?
Well, I'll present my theories. Because as I was talking things through, we know it's going to Doomsday and then Secret Wars. Fantastic Four returning in Doomsday. We saw Doom in the mid-credit sequence, interested in Franklin, trying to do something. I can't remember. Just basically talking to him. And did he actually... We didn't see him take Franklin.
No.
We cut before anything happened. Just Sue finding Franklin, talking to Doom in some way. Which, just really quickly... timeline, because we talked about that. I'm like, if this is the timeline I have in my brain, if we start 4 years post origin of the FF, then we have the events of this film, we jump to 1 year later for the 5th anniversary, and then another 4 years after that with the scene with Doom. Mm-hmm. In my brain, I think if we take 1961 as the origin, like it is for the first issue of the comics, 4 years later, 1965, 1 year, 1966, meaning the post-credit sequence is 1970. Mm-hmm. And I think that kind of works with the vibe of the film and everything. Which then, how are they going, when do they get to our Prime universe? But I think this is what I think is going to happen. When we know we were going to Secret Wars, and I think we're going to Hickman's Secret Wars. So the 2000... can't remember exactly. I want to say it's 13, 15, somewhere, Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars series. And I think this works because Doom is the central figure of that story, the central antagonist. And what he does in that film is, prior to that, in a storyline that takes place in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers run, there are all these not temporal incursions, that's from Star Trek Voyager, multiversal incursions into the Prime universe. Because the multiverse is breaking down. The multiverse is collapsing. It's collapsing.
Happy.
Yeah.
The multiverse is falling apart.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's kind of like
Marvel Jesus isn't going to do it. Someone else needs to.
Yeah. And that's where I think like now having seen Loki season 2, it's like, okay, Loki is literally holding the multiverse together himself. But the multiverse is collapsing, and these basically the universes collide. It's what's called an incursion event. Which supposedly, when I was reading Wikipedia, we've seen that in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We saw a world where this had happened. Mm-hmm. And essentially what Dooms does in Secret Wars is that he takes the remnants of all the other universes that have collapsed and assembles them into one giant battle world. Mm-hmm. And he's holding it together himself with the assistance of, and I got this wrong when we were talking, Molecule Man. There's too many dang M men in the Marvel Universe. Miracle Man, Molecule Man, Mole Man.
We assume Molecule Man would do a better job of holding an entire universe together than Mole Man.
Probably.
Okay.
And basically the events of Secret War is Doom has taken over. He's literally somehow taken Sue as his consort. But where it all ends is that Doom is defeated, and then Franklin himself literally rebuilds the multiverse. He resets everything, basically.
And that's what we were talking about before we came on. That's what we heard this week. Is that at the end of Secret Wars, the multiverse will be reset, the timeline will be reset, everything will be reset.
And I think that's where we're going. They're probably going to do their own version of it, but I think they're going to go with Hickman's version of Secret Wars. And I'm sorry, not the 1980s version.
That's fine. I can deal with it. But I'd really like to get a Beyonder in disco gear, which is what we get in the late 80s version.
That would be nice. My question is, are they just going to use Franklin for all of it instead of this whole Molecule Man thing?
They
Probably.
might.
That's what I think.
We've already given all sorts of praise to the Fantastic Four movie, but one thing that I was really interested in that I liked is that we don't leave Earth 828 in this film. We kind of assumed we would by the end of it because of the post-credit scene for Thunderbolts. We kind of assumed that we would get out of here, and we don't. And Doom's there, but Doom's in the 828. And so what does that mean? You know, one thing you said as we were coming home from watching the movie, Michael, is that you could watch 5 more films.
I could.
In this universe.
And they alluded to that, though, too, when she was talking to their version of the United Nations.
It's the Future Foundation, which is something else that Hickman introduced.
Yes, but it's the Future Foundation. She's talking to them, and it shows the empty Latvia seat.
Yep.
For a long time, too. We got to make sure you get this.
Make sure you know what this is.
Make sure you can read the card and see it's Latveria.
But here's my thought, and you guys tell me what you think. Tell me if I'm wrong completely.
You're wrong.
Okay, thank you. This is what Josh and I discussed. Was Doom playing Galactus the whole time? And he talked Galactus into creating the cosmic storm that created the Fantastic Four, hoping that when Reed and Sue had a child, it would be able to do this.
That would be a very, very long shot.
Yeah, and the only reason why I think that is because when Galactus is scanning the ship, it's like he doesn't expect he's ready to kill and destroy the ship until he starts scanning it and then senses the power cosmic in Sue's belly.
But it's because he didn't know she was pregnant.
But he was waiting for that in this theory. I love this theory. I don't think that's happening. I kind of love it, though, because it's really, really interesting. The one thing that gives me some weight toward it, and I don't believe it, so Josh, when you're listening here, I don't really believe this.
I don't know you, Josh, but you're wrong.
But one thing that I find really interesting about it is Galactus is kind of evil here. And Galactus shouldn't be. But Galactus kind of smirks a little when he stretches Reed out.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that's really important to know about Galactus is that he transcends good and evil. He just is. He just consumes. That's who he is. And this Galactus seemed to have a little more of an edge in that way than we usually see.
Yeah, I can't remember, and I'm sure this has happened in the comics, but my brain is not thinking of it immediately. Galactus wanting to end his hunger and feeling so like that is his driving force. That I want to say like I've seen that maybe once or twice in the comics, but it's never been like an overriding thing. And especially, he does come off as a little Like, I want this to end now, and I'm going to do it any way possible.
Sure.
He just wants a vacation.
He does. He wants to be Galen again.
Yeah, he just
which
wants a
is who he
vacation.
was.
And so we've got all that, and we talked and discussed the one thing too. Right now in production, we've seen it all over the place, is the new Spider-Man's Brand New Day movie. Another one of my thoughts is we get in a mid-credits, it's got to be in mid-credits because the end credit scenes have just become kind of humorous now.
Fun Easter eggs.
But I think in a mid-credit scene in Brand New Day, we get a Doom reveal as Robert Downey Jr. to Peter Parker.
And I think that would make a lot of
That
sense.
is just, and that is just tragic.
It's so mean,
Yeah.
Dave.
Because now
Josh Krasinski, Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, along with our Pedro Pascal. So, yeah, and so it's my question is, I think that's totally possible, and I love that because we've already... I mean, Spider-Man is the punching bag of the Marvel Universe and the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
and how hard is this movie going to be for him when nobody knows who he is? I keep forgetting that in the back of my mind, that nobody knows that he is Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'd forgotten
Nobody
that too.
even knows Peter Parker, period.
I think one thing that I want with Doom is I want the Doom that shows up at the end of Fantastic Four, and if we see it at the end of Brand New Day, that's the same Doom. Maybe he's from a different universe in the 828, but I don't want to have all of the Dooms in the way we had all the Kangs. I think Doom should be a more singular figure, no matter who he is. And I think it's completely reasonable to think he's figured out a way to move from universe to universe and has figured out that this child can exist in the 828, even if he didn't manipulate the moves to get there. And then ends up in the, what do we call the MCU? Is it the Earth 1999?
Something like that, I forget.
But they also say 616.
But here's the other part too, is that there was an article that came out a couple of weeks ago that said that we will have Avengers in the Baxter building. So they will go to 828.
That's interesting.
So how would it be for them to go to 828 and the spaceship that is coming at the end of Thunderbolts that they catch has these guys on it?
Could be. I hope for Reed's sake that Namor is not on there because Namor and Sue have a deep history. So that'll be
blame
a
her?
moment.
Yeah,
That'll be a
and
moment.
I do
Or do
totally
you blame
get
him.
I totally get what you said now. When we're coming back, you were telling me about how attractive Namor is in Wakanda Forever. It's like, okay, I get it. That man's a god.
Literally.
Yeah, literally with wings
Literally.
and everything.
All right, guys, you know what? This was a lot of fun. And it didn't disappoint as much as I thought it was. I knew it wasn't going to. So I appreciate you guys coming
that was
in.
a little weird
It was.
wordage
I had to
there.
spin it back around.
I don't know if you spun it enough. Dave,
I'll
to be
I'll
honest,
try
but
harder
that's
next time.
It was as fun as I thought it might be.
It was as fun as I thought it might be.
Weren't you two a
No,
disappointment?
I kind of had a feeling that this was going to be a good discussion, almost to the point where I told Ryan, we may not need to do a final segment. This may be 2 segments, but this was a great discussion, and I'm glad